Good morning, children. This is a video on the lesson Microorganism, Friend and Foe. So, last week we did learn about the microorganisms, how they were beneficial, and what are the microorganisms. Yes? So, here I will just have a recap of whatever we have learned in short. We did learn about different types of microorganisms and the instrument that helps us to view the microorganisms. The organisms that are able to view under the microscope are called microscopic organisms. And here we saw like five different types like bacteria, fungi, algae, yes, virus, all these things we did see about it. And we also saw about the benefits of the microorganisms in industries as well as on a day-to-day life, how these microorganisms play their vital role in helping us. All right. And now, the continuation of that particular lesson, we will learn about disease causing microorganisms. So, it is both, it is beneficial as well as it is harmful. Okay. And then we will also learn about the preservation of food, how these microorganisms helps in preserving food. And then we will learn about the nitrogen fixation and nitrogen cycle. What is the role of the microorganism in fixing the nitrogen as well as in nitrogen cycle? Yes, shall we get into the lesson? Now we will learn about harmful microorganisms. Now looking at this, here I would like to let you know what are pathogens. You might have heard about the term pathogens. Yes. So microorganisms are harmful in many ways. Microorganisms causes diseases in human beings, plants and animals. Such microorganisms are called as pathogens. All the microorganisms are not called as pathogens. That too, the microorganism which causes harm in living beings. Okay, it might be like human being or plant or animal. Okay, those things, those particular microorganisms are called as pathogens. Okay, so in whenever you have visited like laboratory or hospitals, you might have seen some kind of board. If you are very keen in seeing that, like pathology department. Okay, so there are pathologists who work on these microorganisms. All right, so now the next thing is we need to understand why these microorganisms are harmful, because these microorganisms get transmitted from one source to the other source. Okay, so we can see the source of infection from where we are getting these information in the next slide. And here we just understand what are these microorganisms, how these microorganisms are infectious. Okay, so looking into this particular thing, disease caused by microorganism and transmitted from an infected person or an animal to another person or an animal called communicable diseases or infectious diseases. Okay, so any diseases, okay, when it, well, whatever the origin it may be, but when it was transferred from one organism to the other organism, either it might be a person, human being or animal, then it is called as communicable disease. One very good example which I can give you, the current situation we are going through is this COVID-19 coronavirus. Yes, so how it is transferred? It is transferred from one person to the other. It is a communicable disease. This falls under communicable diseases. So some other examples which I can give you is common cold. Okay, so we're like five or six friends, when we are sitting together and we are talking something or we are sharing something, okay, all of a sudden someone will sneeze. Okay, so immediately after 5 or 10 minutes you can see some other person is also sneezing. The next day some other person will sneeze, because these are all like microorganisms which comes out in the form of droplets, okay, or through the objects wherever they touch, and it is getting transferred. So common cold is a very common thing which we always go through. Okay, so that is how it is transferred. It is caused by a microorganism. Okay, next, chicken pox. This is also transferable, it is communicable, and it is infectious. Okay, so these are like small lumps will be seen on the surface of the skin. Okay, this is chicken pox. Next, tuberculosis. You might have heard about TB. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you know the full term tuberculosis, but tuberculosis, in short, we call them as TB. Okay, we say like TB patients, okay, TB centers, you might have heard about it. So you can see the person who is sitting here who is infected with this particular microorganism, and see how the body has been turned. He's very thin and nothing is there in the body except the bones and the skin, right? That is how he looks like. So this severe is the act of this particular microorganism. Now let us see what are the microorganisms that causes these kind of diseases. All right. Here, let us see the sources of infection. So the first one, what we're going to see here is through direct contact. Direct contact in sense when we touch a person or when we are in very close contact with a person. Okay, so like friends, we are definitely we cannot sit like 2 to 3 feet always, right? Definitely, we will just put our hands on the shoulder. Yes, we will touch their face. We will give shake hands. So if this is gonna happen, if the and that particular person gonna be infected with some kind of these diseases like chickenpox or ringworm, by touching these things will spread. So that is the reason whenever anyone gets chickenpox, they will get isolated in their home. Yes, we will keep like in our tradition, like being a Tamilian. Here many things we do. I've heard about it, like spraying the turmeric water or keeping neem tree neem leaves, sorry, neem leaves, all these things they do on particular infection because these are all antibiotics. Okay, so now the ringworm is also going to be the same. Let us look this particular picture, you'll have an idea about it. So look at this picture here. You have some circular patches, right? So this kind of patches is like a ringworm. This infection is the ringworm. So if you're going to scratch and if that particular person going to touch someone, all right, and definitely it is a microorganism that can spread, so even they will also get infected. All right, and nowadays we are just seeing many more ads on TV, television, right, for ringworm. So many medications are there for this particular diseases. And now the next one is through air. So through air again, here both the things are in sync with each other for this COVID, right? Do not touch, and even through the air. So in air instance, it's like droplet infection. They call them as droplet infection, like common cold I told you, and flu. Yes, and now the best example, which is like COVID-19. Okay, so see, the person is sneezing, everything will get spread. All of a sudden, when he sneezes, the virus will just go in and around him. That is the reason we have to maintain the social distancing. Okay, next. Source of infection is through contaminated food and water. Okay, so wherever we go, why we are asked to carry a water bottles? Because at home we will just heat it or boil it. It is completely sterilized. Okay, so no microorganisms can be there in extreme hot. That is the reason we are asked to drink hot water frequently. So nowadays we are getting many water cans and through many other resources. Yes, we are. That is how we are getting water as well as food. We are getting the food packed. Most of the people are getting food from outside nowadays. Okay, it has become a new tradition nowadays, but that is not actually good. So here there are many ways through which the microorganisms spread through food and water. Okay, so being hygienic will help us, and one such example is like cholera and typhoid. You might have heard about this disease like cholera, which is caused, it is a waterborne disease actually. And typhoid, it can be either water or food, mostly of food. Okay, so what happens, these are caused by particular bacteria like micro, I will discuss what are the microorganisms. I'm just repeating only like microorganisms, not to worry, I will let you know what are the microorganisms causing this diseases. Okay, so now we are just learning about the sources of infection alone. Okay, so, through contaminated food and water, what are the two main diseases? Yes, cholera and typhoid. Keep this in your mind. And then the next one, through cuts and wounds. Okay, so through cuts and wounds, one such disease which is discussed over here is tetanus. Okay, if there is going to be any wound and that will be infected to the nearest places, and that is like tetanus. Then parasites causes amoebic dysentery enter the water when infected person passes feces. Okay, so what does it mean? Because now we have a sophisticated restrooms. Yes, restrooms, bathrooms, or toilets, whatever it is. We are just flushing it and we are just cleaning it with many liquids. Yes, antiseptic liquids and all these things are over there, cleaning liquids. But what about the people, those who are still using the places in outer space? Yes, people still are surviving, like still are there. It's not surviving, many are like that. Even if you're gonna just pass through, even in Chennai itself, many places on the roadside you can see like people living on the roads. Yes, where do they go for all such needs? Okay, definitely they will find one particular place and they will get all the fecus and everything done, and they will wash the water, and then they will move on. Even in some villages they are still following this kind of procedures. So the microorganism that lives, that is as a parasite that lives in particular water, it will get easily infected in the body. All right, do you understand? The next source of infection is through insects. So these things are discussed there in your book, and certain things are not discussed in your book. So it is better to have a reference of this particular content, whatever I have discussed. Okay. So through insects. So here let us see what are the points given. Insects such as flies, fleas, and mosquito acts as a carrier of microbes from infected person to healthy person. So it is not through the bite of a insect, okay, like mosquitoes or fleas or flies, okay, they just carry the microorganisms from one source to the other source. They're acting as carriers. Okay, so these organisms exist somewhere, okay, and they carry from that particular origin to the resources. Okay, so that is how they are carried. So these are called as like carriers of microbes. Okay, so here one such example is female anopheles mosquito. Female anopheles mosquito, look here, is the carrier of malaria causing protozoan called plasmodium. So here the mosquito is not causing the disease. This plasmodium is carried by the mosquito, and that is injected through the mosquito in our body. Can you understand now? So look at this picture. So this is called as female anopheles mosquito. So all the mosquitoes, we just see it as an insect. When it comes and bites, we just tap it and then we throw it off. But each, there are different types of mosquitoes. Okay, they have different names as well, and they have different roles as well. The structures differ in certain things. Okay, so this is how they are. So look at this picture. This is female Anopheles mosquito, and this carries a protozoan called as Plasmodium. All right. Next, female Aedes mosquito act as carrier for dengue virus. So you might have definitely heard about malaria and dengue. Okay. So this is Aedes. Aedes mosquito. See the body, the physical structure of the mosquito. You could see the difference. Yes. See how the legs are here and how the legs are here. See the entire structures, everything differs over here. Okay, so this is female Aedes mosquito. Fleas transfer the bacterium that causes bubonic plague from rats to humans. You might have heard about like rat fever, they will say, just as in layman language. So they call them as bubonic plague. Okay, it is transferred from rats to humans. All right. Now we will discuss about the disease caused by bacteria in humans. Okay. So to be very specific, I have just distinguished, and you can find these contents in your textbook as well, in a tabular column as well as in the page number like 24. Okay. And here I have just categorized, and I will explain you about this. So in specific, like bacteria, the disease, the name of the disease, cholera, and it is caused by the bacteria Vibrio cholerae. Okay, the name of the bacteria is Vibrio cholerae. The disease typhoid is caused by Salmonella typhi. So the name of the bacteria, this is all like scientific name of the bacteria. Okay, so always just remember while writing this name, the first name. Okay, here we will have to use a capital letter, and the name followed by a generic and specific name. Here the first letter will be a small letter. All right. So typhoid is caused by Salmonella typhi. Gastric ulcer, and this gastric ulcer is also caused by, so when we were learning about the beneficial resources, we did learn about this, right? Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori. This is caused by gastric. This causes gastric ulcer. Tetanus is caused by Clostridium tetani. What causes this one? Say the name along with me, so the names will be easy for you. All right. Here insert, if you're gonna just learn everything, anything that you remember even during exam time, it is easy for you. Okay. So everything you have to learn in detail. Clostridium tetani. Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Okay. Leprosy. Leprosy is caused by Mycobacterium leprae. Okay, see, most of the diseases are kept in the name of the bacteria. Yes, so here most of the species, these are the species, particular species. So the species name is given for this particular diseases. All right. Now let us discuss about the disease caused by the bacteria in plants and animals. Okay, in the previous slide, we discussed about the diseases caused by bacteria in humans. So we are discussing only about the bacteria. Just note it down. Okay, and later we will discuss about even the other microorganisms. So now the first disease which we're going to discuss here is anthrax, and the disease is caused by Bacillus anthracis. Say the name after me so that it is easy for you to pronounce and learn it. Bacillus anthracis. And host is nothing but on which it acts. Okay, so it acts on ruminants. Ruminants are nothing but the grass eating animals, mostly, to be very specific, like cow, giraffe, deer. All these things are grass eating animals. I mean, not only grass eating, they're ruminants. They have rumen system in them. Next disease, crown gall, and here the name of the bacteria is Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Okay, so you can say like agrobacterium. From this word itself we can understand the host is plants, agriculture. Okay, so Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Next, the name of the disease is blight disease, and it is caused by the bacteria named Xanthomonas oryzae. So the host here is rice plant. Say the name, Xanthomonas oryzae. The name of the disease is leaf spot disease, and it is caused by Pseudomonas. The first word is silent, like how we see in amoeba, right? So here in amoeba there is a pseudopodia. That's what I meant. Okay, so in that pseudopodia, it's the same pseudo. The first letter will be silent. Pseudomonas tomato. So the name of the plant host is the tomato plant. Obviously, it's clear here. And then citrus canker. So on the lemon, most of the citrus fruits are lemon, sweet lime, orange. All these are citrus fruits. So this is caused by Xanthomonas citri, lemon and orange tree. Okay, you can see if the fruit is infected with the citrus canker. Okay, by this disease, and you can see like on the top layer of the skin will be a little bit bulged, okay, with brown shade in color. Those things are called as like cankers, citrus cankers, caused by Xanthomonas citri. Diseases caused by virus. So here we will learn about the a disease caused by virus. So in the previous video, I have explained you about the virus, which is it is very smaller in size than the other microorganisms, like comparing bacteria, fungi, algae, or whatever it is. Because here virus, it can be viewed only with the help of electron microscope. So here the background which I have given, this is a structure of a particular virus, okay, which causes chicken pox. Okay, so here we will see what is the name of the virus. All right, this is like the structure seen through the electron microscope. See how well defined it is. All right, so these are the specific character of the virus. It will always just act on a live host. Okay, it will not act on any dead organisms. Okay, only when the host is alive, it will just act on it. So you can be very clear, like even nowadays how many things you can see in news channels, right? So those who are died because of COVID-19, they are not able to see the people and they are thinking it will get infected, but actually, the host will not live in any dead organisms. That is a true fact behind that. All right, so let us all learn, gain knowledge, and act accordingly. Now, let us see here. Virus cause some diseases that are incurable or difficult to cure. So here it is said like incurable or difficult to cure because it needs more amount of attention for it to be cured, because you might have heard about the condition called AIDS. Yes, AIDS, it's not a disease actually, it is a condition, it's a syndrome. Okay, so it is caused, the actual full form of this AIDS is acquired immune deficiency syndrome. So when this particular virus, HIV virus, human immunodeficiency virus, enters the body, it will destroy the immune system. When the immune system is completely destroyed, what happens? We are prone to get many other diseases. So we acquire many diseases because of the deficiency of this immune system. So that is the reason it is called as AIDS. Okay, so it is not a particular disease, it is a condition by losing the immune system in the body, and this is caused by HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. Okay, next, viral diseases are this is one of the important one which is very common to discuss. And here viral diseases are influenza, rabies, hepatitis, and polio. You might have heard all these things, right? Like rabies, hepatitis, and polio. Polio drops, definitely might have heard about, like hepatitis injection given for the babies. All these things, we have vaccines nowadays. Those days there were no vaccines, and they severely they were all got all these kind of infections, and they were severely attacked by these microorganisms. Now, smallpox is caused by variola virus. So I just told you this picture is all about the chickenpox virus, and here smallpox. What do you think about? Do you think that the virus is very small? No, exactly not. It is gonna be like the virus size is almost like similar, okay, but the different category. But the lumps that comes out of the body, it will be huge, it will just leave bad marks on the body. Okay, so that was really very pandemic those days. Okay, so it was causing to many people, and they were really scared about the smallpox, and they did so many things, and then vaccine has been created, and then everything has been eradicated. Now totally there is no smallpox seen, and that was caused by the virus called as variola virus. And chickenpox is caused by varicella zoster. So now you would have understood the name of this particular virus, it's varicella zoster. Measles is caused by rubella virus. Okay, now so far we have learned about the microorganisms and their sources, how they are caused, and what are the microorganisms that causes all these diseases. And here I will also share a worksheet as well as a material for you to understand how the mode of communication, the symptoms, and the preventions, whatever it is given for particular diseases. Okay, so here let us learn about food preservation. How does this microorganism help in preserving the food? That is what we're going to look here. All right, and now here, let us have a definition of what the food preservation is all about. Processing a food to prevent its spoilage and retain its nutritive value for a longer period is called preservation. So when you're gonna cook something in the morning for the breakfast, for example, let's take an example as chapati or kurma or whatever it is. When we just prepare it, it will be good for a day. Yes, after a day, definitely we have to heat up and then we have to refrigerate. Why we are doing all these things? Have you ever thought about it? Why we have to do? But sometimes if we are not doing it, it will get spoiled. Yes. Sometimes even when you bring the lunch to school, if it is not good, we will just try to smell and see whether the food is good or not. Yes, it gets somewhere spoiled, and it doesn't allow us to take anymore. So, have you ever thought how it is automatically getting spoiled, how it is prepared in the morning, or whatever it is? Yes, here we will see about it. All right, so how the microorganism spoils the food as well as how it helps in preservation of the food as well. Okay, so here the first method used for the preservation is the chemical method. Let's see what are the chemicals used for it. The chemicals, like, so in your textbook it might have given like a salts. Okay, so when you're just reading it, don't get confused what are the salts about. Salts are nothing but the normal, they are not discussing about the normal salt that you're using for cooking. It is like the chemical salts they are talking about. So here are some things, some salts are discussed, right? Sodium benzoate, sodium metabisulfite are used to store jams, ketchups, fruit juices, etc. Okay, so these things are used to preserve these particular food items. Okay, see, ketchup, pickles, squash. All right, these things are used in this. And then we add salt and acid preservatives to pickles and prevent the attack of microbes. So in these conditions, the microorganism will not be able to survive. So that is the reason we are using more amount of like chemical salts or acids to prevent these microorganisms. Like acids also, I can just give you an example. In the digestive system you may have learned. Yes, so whatever, even when we talk, even now many microorganisms are getting inside my mouth as well. So those microorganisms are killed by the acids when it reaches the stomach. So acids are that effective to kill the microorganisms here, which is acting as a preservatives. Okay. The next method of preserving the food is like sun drying. So many time what we will do, you might have seen your mom taking the pickles and they will just keep it in the sun, or we will keep some of the food under the sun. So what happens? Sun drying helps the microorganisms to get suppressed and it will not act anymore. Microbes cannot grow in dry conditions, so that is the reason. Okay, so when you're keeping under the sun, everything will get dried up and the microorganisms cannot survive in that particular atmosphere. So the absence of moisture prevents the multiplication of microorganisms. So anything, if it is going to be moist in condition, definitely they will say it will get spoiled very easily. So when you're going to dry it up, for example, even the rice or like wheat, before they're gonna grind it as a flour, they will just dry it up in the sun. Yes, you might have seen your mom doing it. So just because to avoid the multiplication of the microorganisms, we are doing this. The next method is like salting. So how does the salt help in preservation of food? Common salt has been used to preserve meat, fishes for ages. So in certain culture, they will also just add more amount of salt and they will dry it up. The dry meat powder they will be using. Yes, as well as in the other things, like we will eat like dry fishes. Yes, you might have seen. Okay, the fishes will be dried, and if you're gonna take that dry fish, and it will be really very salty because it will be fully completely soaked, and everything, the all the particular parts of that particular or dead organism will be completely filled with salt. Okay, it is a salt rich content one, it is done with this process. So meat fishes are covered with the dry salt to check the growth of the bacteria. So when it is completely covered with these kind of salts, no microorganisms can enter. And even now you might have heard many videos and many things saying in the TV, right? Wash all the vegetables in the rock salt and turmeric, because these acts as an antibiotic. Okay, so they will kill the microorganisms. So that is the reason they are asking us to goggle throat mouth with the help of the salt water, hot salt water. Okay, so that effective is salting. Salting is also used to preserve amla, raw mangoes, tamarind for the pickle purpose. Okay, and then here these are the pictures I have included, like dry fishes. See here, and then sugaring. How does sugar helps? We might think, oh, if we give more amount of sugar, some kind of microorganisms will prevail on it. No, here they are using it as a preservative agent. Like sugar inhibits the growth of microorganisms. This is the real fact behind it. Jamun is preserved for longer periods using sugar syrup. I have just given in one example over here, like jamun, like gulab jamun. All right, but here there are many other examples like jam. Okay, all these things are preserved with the help of the sugar, because it will not allow any of the microorganisms to grow. It just inhibits the growth of the microorganisms. Okay, mostly like bacteria. Some more preservation method used are like with oil and vinegar. Okay, so oil and vinegar you might have seen again, like pickles is one of the best example I can give, because pickles, when we get it from the shop, we are not using it all of a sudden and we are throwing it, right? We are keeping it even for a month or more than that. So if it is gonna get spoiled, or if you feel like spoiling, you can just keep it in the sun and then we can preserve it. So that is how, like, days and ages we are just preserving the food, certain things. Okay, so here oil and vinegar prevent spoilage of pickles because bacteria cannot live in such an environment. So in oil, that's the reason when you just cook certain curries, okay, with more amount of oil for like traveling purpose, if you're gonna have it in a bottle, you can use it for like 2 to 3 days. Okay, if you're gonna travel in a train, or like a longer journey, you're gonna take it. Okay, or for a trip, you can just have these kind of content prepared and packed in a bottle, so the microorganisms will not spoil, or it will not get spoiled by the microorganisms. Okay, so here, this is what it's given, and I have just included some pictures on this. See how the containers are used for the oil and the other things. Okay, and here, pasteurization, you might have heard about this term long back. Yeah, pasteurization, Louis Pasteur, who invented this process. Okay, pasteurization, it is nothing but the milk is heated to above 70 degrees Celsius for 15 to 30 seconds and then suddenly chilled and sorted. It prevents the growth of microbes. It is a process, actually they're heating the milk to a very high temperature of like 70 degrees Celsius, okay, for 15 to 30 seconds. It's not minutes, just keep it in your mind. For 15 to 30 seconds it just boiled to the high peak, and then suddenly they will try to chill it down. Okay, so the microorganisms cannot live in extreme heat and extreme low temperature, and that is the reason we are boiling the content and eating it hot, and we are refrigerating to preserve it. Okay, now can you understand the difference? Okay, so in the extreme low temperature, microorganisms cannot prevail, as well as in extreme high temperature, it cannot prevail. That is a contradictory, and that is how we are just using things in and around us. Okay, like refrigerated vegetables, you can see here how it is preserved, freezed. And then canning. So canning, in sense, with the term itself we can understand, cans. Okay, the sterilized food is stored in airtight container to prevent the contamination due to microorganisms. So like airtight containers here we are using to prevent the entry of microorganism, and just it can be preserved for a very longer time with the preservatives added on it. Okay, this is a canning process. Do you all understand? Now let us learn about the nitrogen fixation and nitrogen cycle. Okay, so how the microorganisms help in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen in soil, and how the cycle happens from the atmosphere to the soil and from the soil to the atmosphere. This is what we're going to learn here. So here, look at this picture. You can clearly understand here the nitrogen from the atmosphere. In the atmosphere, we have around like 78% of atmosphere. And you know what? This 78% of nitrogen in the atmosphere, it is always maintained. How it can be maintained? Only when there is a cycle, it can be maintained. Okay, if it is gonna be like a one-way process, it cannot be maintained. So the let us understand the cycle and let's understand how it maintains. Okay, so there are like 78% of nitrogen gas in the atmosphere, which cannot be directly consumed by the plants. So for this purpose, what happens? It has to get fixed in the soil, and from the soil it has to be taken to the plants. Yes, and that is how they can use this kind of minerals for them to nourish it. And nitrogen is one of the important nourishing part for the plant in order to grow very well, in order to give a very good resource out of it, like fruits or flowers or whatever it is. So the atmospheric nitrogen cannot be directly taken by plants and animals, even we. Okay, we fall under like animal categories. Certain bacteria like rhizobium and blue green algae, so you have to just take your mind back to grade 7 where we have learned much about it. Yes, as well as in the previous lesson we have learned about in learned about the crop production. Yes, so here you have to just remember about the bacteria rhizobium and blue-green algae that is helping in fixing the nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, okay, in the soil in the form of ammonia, the atmospheric nitrogen. And these nitrogens are nothing but the protein particles present in that. Okay, these protein particles are broken up like in the form of like ammonia. And then some nitrogen fixing bacteria convert ammonia into nitrites, and then there are many bacteria acting on it. Okay, different types of bacteria, and the other bacteria are the microorganisms convert the nitrites into nitrates. Only when it is in the form of the nitrates the plants are ready to absorb this particular nutrients and for the purpose of growth. Okay, so here that is what this picture explains. The nitrogen fixing bacteria transforms atmospheric nitrogen into a fixed nitrogen where it is fixing getting fixed in the plant root nodules. And here the rhizobium, mostly it is present well in like leguminous plants like peas, beans are some examples given. Okay, now let us see the role of nitrogen cycle. Now here let us discuss about the nitrogen cycle in detail. We have learned what happens in nitrogen fixation, how the nitrogen from the atmosphere is fixed in the soil with the help of certain bacteria and also with the process of lightning. Yes, so the atmosphere in the nitrogen in the atmosphere is fixed into the soil. Now, okay, so now what happens? And it happens with the help of certain nitrogen fixing bacteria, and the ammonia is converted into nitrites and then through nitrates, and now the nitrates are there in the soil. Now what happens with how the cycle is happening? Let's see. So the plants take in the nitrates through their roots and assimilate them into proteins. So the plants, whatever it is present, which is and it has the root as its base, right, where it absorbs all the nutrients from the soil and it assimilates means distributes to the different parts of the plant or trees. Okay, so this is what happens here. And this converted nitrogenous compounds in the form of nitrates, it's absorbed by the root hairs and then it is taken to the plants for assimilation process. So this nitrates, what happens, see, it is assimilated to the plants present here. So you can just understand this nitrogen fix nitrogen, okay, nitrogen fixation, and then the ammonia, okay, and then it is converted, and few things here it is assimilated to the plants. Okay, and certain cases what happens, directly the nitrifying bacteria, it is getting involved and it is converted as nitrates. Okay, and it can be assimilated to the different parts of the plant. And here the animals obtain the proteins they need by eating plants or the flesh of the other animals. So even in our body we have the nitrogen resources like in the form of proteins. Yes, so how do we obtain? We eat the plants and animals as food. So these plants which fixes the nitrogen and takes in as their resources, we take those as a food resource, and animals also take plants as a food resource and we consume. And even the carnivores, they're gonna eat the animals which consume the plants. Yes, so obviously it is like a cycle over here. When the plants and animals eventually die, what happens? The nitrogen compounds are broken down to give ammonia, and this process is called as ammonification or nitrification process. Here the term nitrification is given here. So obviously when these animal dies also, it will get what, disintegrated or decomposed with the help of the organisms like fungi, okay, and bacteria, and obviously it will get settled in the soil, and this is how it is also taken back to the soil. Okay, so this process is called as like ammonification, and there are some denitrifying bacteria convert the nitrogenous bases and to the compounds of nitrogen gases. Okay, and then it converts as a nitrogen gas and taken back to the atmosphere and maintains in the form of nitrogen gas. Okay, so everything, this conversion from the atmospheric nitrogen, it is done by the microorganisms, and the conversion of the nitrates in the soil okay, as a nitrogen gas, it is also done by the microorganisms. Okay, there is no other process involved in it. So this is how the microorganisms present in the soil and in the atmosphere helps in the conversion of the nitrogen, okay, to be utilized by the plants and animals as well as the human resources, and then it is again taken back to the atmosphere in the form of nitrogen gas. So here we can easily identify the nitrogen gas, we cannot consume it directly, and it helps in maintaining the balance of the nitrogen. It has to be maintained as 78% all the time, because this cycle is keep on repeating, it will never stop at all. Okay, so this process like nitrification and denitrification, you can either say as like ammonification also. Okay, so you need not get confused with this particular picture. In your textbook it is very clearly given, but there is no pictures, only a cycle is given, so you can just refer your textbook also. All right, so if you have any doubts, please do check with that. So let us discuss about the lesson, whatever we have just learned as a recap. Okay, in this video, we discussed about the disease-causing microorganisms. There are many harmful microorganisms like bacteria and virus. Okay, we discussed about the disease caused by the microorganisms like typhoid, yes, tetanus, how the infections are like communicable in the form of like infectious diseases, and we interrelated with the current pandemic situation as well. And then we also discussed about the preservation of food, how microorganisms plays a vital role in preserving the food, which is also spoiled by the other microorganisms, harmful microorganisms. Okay, so without preservation of food, definitely the business cannot happen. Only with the preservatives we are just able to purchase the things that are easily perishable at shop, and we are using it for the purposes. All right, and we discussed about the salt, sugar, oil, how it acts as a good preservative. And then we also discussed about the nitrogen fixation, how the rhizobium, the bacteria that are present in the root nodules of leguminous plants, helps in fixing the nitrogen from the atmosphere, and how it is converted as nitrites and nitrates, and how the bacteria is present in the soil, it is converting the nitrates into the nitrogen gas to balance the nitrogen in the atmosphere. Meanwhile, there are many organisms, they consume the nitrogen in different forms as proteins. Even we humans, animals, and plants are involved in it. All right, and this is what we have learned in this particular video, and I have given that only those things as a recap here. And overall, we have learned like six major concepts which we have previously discussed. So here, have these both the videos saved for this particular lesson. Okay, and it is gonna be very important and it is very interesting as well, so we can discuss the question answers also. All right, and if you're gonna have any doubt in this, please do contact me. It's not just writing the question and answers and sending it to me. I just want the clarification that you have understood the lesson, and that is a lot more important. All right, so make sure that you have understood this lesson. Please, if you have any doubts, contact me. Thank you, children.